to 4. Organization.
Do you have a gardening problem? We can help you with that. A program dedicated to help you grow a better garden, maintain your landscape, grow healthier trees, make that grass look a little bit greener, as well as preserving what you grow. We're here to help you with your gardening problem. You're tuned in to Garden Talk Radio.
You are listening to the most informational-packed hour of garden-focused radio in the country and on the internet with your host, husband and wife team Joey and Holly Baird. This is the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show.
Well, welcome to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show. The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging projects, visit powerplanter.com. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us to talk gardening. Whether you're listening to us on one of the 16 stations that is broadcasting our program here in 2020, through our radio app, through our website. That website is thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com. Under the Season 4 tab at the top of the page, podcast replay, in-studio video replay. Thank you for taking that time out of your day. I am your host, Joy Baird. Beside me is my wife, co-host, best friend, and gardening partner,
Holly Baird.
This program is for you, about you, to help your garden grow better, to maintain your landscape, to make your trees greener, as well as preserving what you grow indoors and out. There's a couple of ways in which you can get a hold of us, and you can do that by emailing us at gardentalkradio@gmail.com. gardentalkradio@gmail.com. You can do that, or you can give us a call anytime, 24/7 at 1-800-927-SHOW, 1-800-927-SHOW. You can get direct contact with us right now, or after the show, you can certainly do that. Leave a message. We will call you back with the answer to your question. We got a big show lined up for you, as we always do. Segment 1, we're going to be talking about what you should be doing in your garden right now. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. And segment 2, what to do with all the apples and pears you may be going to get, or you already know you will have. And our guest is Jackie Beyer. She's the host of the gardening podcast out of Montana. She will be with us and your garden questions. So, Holly, let's get into the program here, and let's talk about what people should be doing in their garden right now. It's after Labor Day. Some people think gardening's over and done with until spring next year.
Well, we certainly don't think that. So, and that's okay if you do, but if you are like us and we still have plenty of time to do some gardening, to harvest, whatever. So the biggest thing is that now is the time, if you haven't pulled many weeds, now is the time to pull weeds, because they're going to reseed and then they're going to come back next year.
Because you got one seed, or one plant now, and if you don't get rid of them before they go to seed, you'll have 573 plants possibly.
And in most locations, it's cooler, or going to be cooler out, so you can pull weeds and not have to sweat as much.
Now, this is one of the key elements of the reasons why we transitioned from ground garden into raised bed gardens this year.
Oh yeah, because we had more weeds than we had anything in ground, and now we're in a better situation.
Smaller area, but more productive. Because this year it's the year of the green beans for us. Obviously, we've had tomatoes and we have peppers. Potatoes didn't do so well. But it's the year of the green beans. We're picking, what would that be, a 2.5-gallon bucket every week now out of...
it's starting to slow down,
yeah.
But it was like every week. Yeah, it's funny because I was talking to one of my friends in Colorado, and she's just got a lot of squash.
Okay.
And I was like, we're drowning in green beans.
It's not a bad problem to have.
No.
I think we've froze or blanched and freezed around 85 to 90 cups of beans now in 2.5 cup bags in the freezer, which is an easy way and the best way we have found to preserve the beans. And you've heard that multiple times on this program if you follow us on a regular basis. But we got a lot of green beans, and we're happy about that. We've got good tomatoes. We're happy about that. And the potatoes was about the only thing. We don't have the squash this year, or the zucchini we don't have. Your sister does.
Yeah, she's got a lot.
But we, could be worse. So you should be pulling weeds if you're not already. That's something that needs to get done to limit, not totally extinguish, but limit the amount of new weeds that will come up next year, assuming that you have raised beds or if you're able to purge your ground gardens with the removing those weeds and continue to keep those at bay.
Another thing you want to do is you want to evaluate how things did this year. So for us,
Did you win the Showcase Showdown or did you lose and overbid?
we won the Showcase Showdown of green beans.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
And pretty good on tomatoes, I would say.
Yeah, we're still got a good month
Yeah.
of harvesting tomatoes
But then sadly
for us.
for us, womp womp is the potatoes.
Yeah, we've never had. Now, your sister in her yard, we only planted 6 potatoes. That's what filled out the raised bed that she had. Very good harvest compared to what we were doing. And we've planted in good new compost, and we just have given up the hope of having successful potatoes. Some of you are able to plant one potato, and you got 37 pounds of potatoes that come off that one potato. I'm exaggerating, but you have a phenomenal harvest on that, and we've just never been able. Now, your sister, we had some good years in the backyard of her house, but overall, it's when you can buy, and I'm going to go inorganic at the supermarket, potatoes $3 for 10 pounds, you can't grow them that cheap. That just is not going to happen. But you want to write down, take photographs, make note of, hey, this did really good in this area. This did very poor in this area, and then if it did pour in that area, like we're trying to figure out the potatoes, did you plant something in partial shade that needed full sun? Or, why did something succeed and the other didn't? Did you have a disease? Did you have a lack of nutrients in the soil? What may have been the cause of positive or negative results in that in that area, for that species or that variety?
Right. So that's definitely something that you can consider. So you want to plant your fall garden.
You can do that still, even if you're short on time. Radishes take 30 days to reach maturity. Lettuce, spinach, you can get baby lettuce and spinach off of those. Turnips take 60 days. Rutabagas take 90 days. So that peas take 70 days. So based on, and a lot of these things can handle a frost. They can't handle a hard, super terrible freeze. Swiss chard, baby Swiss chard. Garlic, even if you're not going to plant a fall garden, you can plant fall garlic, and you can get that from BigElkGarlicFarm.com up in Pennsylvania, a sponsor of the program. Got great garlic, family owned and operated, and you can get that, in the ground to get that harvested next late June, early July, based on the variety. You want to plant it about 30 days before your first, take a guess, hard freeze. And then you will have a little top growth, but you can get that established. And even if you don't have real estate that you want to lock up for 9 months on garlic, you can plant it in a flower bed, the side bed of the house. It will work very well in those areas, even if it's not the greatest of soil. Garlic will still grow and grow really, really well.
And I think that's the biggest thing, is just realizing that you're going to take up that space. And
it's worth it, though.
Yeah, and then also just, I know a couple weeks ago we talked about planting great garlic.
Yeah.
But yeah, you definitely want to.
Well, also, if you know where your tomatoes are going to go next year, and let's say the bed is 5 foot wide and you're going to have tomatoes on each side, down the center, you could do a row of garlic now and then plant your potatoes in the spring and then harvest the garlic in the summer next year and kind of utilize all the areas together.
That's a good idea. Definitely.
So another thing, when you ask a gardener what do they like, first is free, and then second is sale. So what we want to do at this time of year, not necessarily in the garden, but preparation for next year. A good gardener is somebody that plans 1 year, 1 month, 1 year, 2 years ahead of schedule.
Right, for sure, yeah. So you want to plan ahead. And so with that being said, you want to think about your space and how maybe you could utilize that better. Now, like for us, we've thought about the investment we put in the raised beds this year, but we lost some space.
We're thinking about possibly, if things work out well for us, we may put in a couple of more raised beds.
Right. So that's one thing. Another thing is just thinking about, like, for example, we had really good green beans, but we didn't have good potatoes. So next year, instead of growing potatoes, what can we use in that space? We used, what did we use? The pallet bed and then just a random.
The Root Maker 4x4 raised
yeah.
bed, and then a little bit in the traditional raised bed that we built. We could plant more beans if you want to do that. But also now, with that take that in consideration, we want to look at if there's something we need. Did all our tools survive? Do we need new tools? Now's the time that these garden centers are doing year-end or season-end closeout sales. This might be the time to get the bagged soil or get the bulk material if they have it on sale, because they're wanting to move inventory so they can finish their books up for the year and that whole stuff there. But there's a lot of places that have things on sale that are legitimately things that you probably will need or do use in the garden.
Yeah, definitely. You could take a look to see what's on sale. Another thing you can do is you can...
If you don't want to go, you just call or look on their website.
Right. Another thing you can do is you can talk with your neighbors, and if they have... A lot of people will separate their plants... Divide their plants. And maybe if you're like, you've been checking out your neighbors... I don't know, hostas or something.
Because everybody's got too many of those.
Definitely, that's an idea. So that you can say, here's some zucchini.
Dividing the rosemary.
For the hostas. Yeah,
that type of thing. So, and then also now we don't want to forget to save seeds. Now is the time we can save seeds on certain varieties that are not biennials, which that would consider the easy ones are onions and leeks. Those takes 2 years to put seeds on. But tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers are okay and easy to save. You let them go until they turn completely yellow on the vine. However, if you have more than one variety, they will have a cross-pollination, so it's best to buy new seed next year. But tomatoes are very easy to save seeds. Peppers, you just pop them open and pop the seeds out on a ceramic plate and let them dry. And label them, because you will forget, we got 7 plates of dried tomatoes. Do you remember what we had? No. Then you got mystery seeds for 25 years. So how can one save tomato seeds? Because I think that would be the most popular procedure in seed saving plant.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if you have a tomato variety that maybe you don't. You have...
It was hard to get a hold of, first of all, yeah. Or it's something that's been passed down for generations in your family, and you want to continue that.
Like Uncle Bob gave you one at the family gathering? Yeah. Okay, so... so one, you can save them easily by... What you want to do is tomatoes have that protective gelatinous slime around them, so you take a glass jar, just a regular drinking glass, whatever, put the tomato seeds in there, put a little bit of water... After a couple days, it's going to do this fermentation thing. So then you take, you'll smell it. It smells kind of like fermented tomatoes. Doesn't take long. Usually.
You want to do it near a ventilation area on the bench of the garage or something like that. You don't want to do it necessarily in the bedroom.
No.
Because it'll take about 3 days. And then you can...
So then what you do is you take like a sieve, something that is your tomato seeds aren't going to wash through. So not necessarily like coriander, but like a sieve of some sort, a mesh strainer, thank you. And what you do is you rinse those seeds off, and then you take them, you want to put them on a ceramic plate, and they'll dry, and then you just flake them off. But you also want to label them, because you'll say, I'll remember that this plate here on the left is Amish paste.
And you can't remember what you had for lunch today, nor can we, so take that for what it's worth. So, right. That's a great way to save seeds. So those are some things you should be doing in the garden right now to either get things one more swing at the garden this fall or get prepped for next year.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to our show. This is our 28th show of 2020. Did you miss last week's show? We talked about where to buy in bulk and how to store it, freezer meal tips, and our guest was adventure and sustainability expert, Rob Greenfield. You can listen to that show by going to your favorite podcast platform and searching the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Podcast, or we'll make it even easier to find them. Send us an email to gardentalkradio@gmail.com, and in the subject line, put show 28, and we will send you the link. We will be right back. Do not go anywhere. We'll be talking about what to do with apples and pears. You're listening to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, a program to help you grow a better garden, maintain your landscape, help your trees grow better, make that grass look greener, preserving what you grow for indoor and out.
Got a question for Joey and Holly? Send it via email anytime to gardentalkradio@gmail.com.
We here at the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardens understand that healthy soil is always the key to a successful garden. We know that chemical fertilizer burns carbon out of the soil and kills the microlife needed for a healthy soil ecosystem. No worries. Chicken Soup for the Soil by Dr. Jim's will stimulate life in the soil and supply all the nutrients most fertilizers neglect. Rather than force-feeding water-soluble chemical fertilizer, we suggest feeding the microbes a smorgasbord of 100% bioavailable nutrients that your plants can consume when they need them. Chicken Soup for the Soil is an amazing fertilizer that will increase the quality of all the fruits and vegetables you grow. Perfect for gardeners, growers, and farmers. To find out more about Chicken Soup for the Soil and other products, visit drjims.com. That's drjimz.com. At Big Elk Garlic Farm, they are passionate about their garlic and take great care to provide you with the best seed stock around. Their high-quality garlic is non-GMO. They stand behind their product 100%. Get your garlic for this fall's planting at bigelkgarlicfarm.com.
Do not go anywhere. There is more of the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show to come, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit powerplanter.com.
Pomona's Universal Pectin is a high-quality pectin that gels reliably with low amounts of any sweetener. If you're trying to reduce the amount of sugar in your diet, you'll love Pomona's Universal Pectin. Now you can make healthy homemade jams and jellies sweetened to your taste. You can use sugar or honey to sweeten. Pomona's Universal Pectin keeps indefinitely when stored in an airtight container. Easy to use, versatile, and comes with directions and recipes in every box. Find out more and where to buy at PomonaPectin.com. Also available at natural food stores and online.
Did you know fall is the best time to plant grass? It's true. With Pearl's premium ultra-low maintenance grass seed, it needs mowing only once every 4 to 6 weeks rather than weekly. Pearl's premium grass grows 4-foot deep roots, so it needs 75% less water and outcompetes other grasses and most weeds without chemicals and stays green year-round. Buy Pearl's premium grass at Whole Food markets in New England, quality garden centers, or buy online at pearlspremium.com. That's pearlspremium.com. And put in the discount code, my name, Joey20. That's Joey20 for 20% off discount today and tomorrow only. Pearlspremium.com, the best grass seed you'll ever grow.
Blue Mel's Garden and Landscape Center offers an awesome selection of high-quality garden and landscape products. We have just the plants you're looking for: annuals, perennials, veggies, herbs, and more. Plus, you can always count on us to answer all of your questions and offer expert advice. Blue Mel's also carries the largest selection of bulk landscape materials in the area. Enjoy a beverage from our coffee shop while your kids run around in our huge playground. Join our growing list of highly satisfied customers. Visit the garden center that offers everything you're looking for. Visit Blue Mel's today.
Blue Mel's 4930 West Loomis Road, 414-282-4220. The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show is brought to you by the following: Neptune Harvest, Happy Leaf LED, Dripworks, We Grow Indoors, Deer Defeat, Harvest More, Blue Ribbon Organics, Blue Mel's Landscape and Garden Center, Chip Drop. Find all sponsors at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com and thank them for their support.
Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit powerplanter.com. Now here are your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show. Do you have a lot of apples? Do you have a lot of pears? You're planning on getting a lot of apples or a lot of pears? What do you want to do with them? What can you do with them? We've got some great suggestions for you, and we'll see how many of these we can get through. But we had a pear tree. It has ceased to exist. It's still upright standing, but it's all but
it's sad.
Yeah, it's all but sad. So
maybe you went pear picking, apple picking. Maybe you have
or
a
you
friend,
will,
or you will, or you have a friend or family member who's like, here's a bucket of pears.
Yeah, you want pears, you want apples, and you say yes, and they dump a pickup truck load on the porch. It happens.
Yeah, it happens.
So we can can them. We can can them as whole apples or pears. We can also make a syrup out of them, or we can can them as being pear sauce or applesauce. So those are some options. Now, Holly, whenever we can these, do we need to peel them, or can we leave the skin on, or what's recommended?
You want to peel them.
So
So what we did is we would take our peeler thing, the crank peeler, whatever as a peeler, crank peeler, and then we would just kind of chop them up a little bit, and then we would peel them. Then we would can them.
Can them, yeah.
And you can can them in their own juice. You can can them in, I think, water. You'd have to look.
Peaches you can do in water. I'm not sure about apples or pears, but you want to find a reputable source that is safe from the National Home for Food Preservation, Ball Canning, Better Homes and Gardens, other reputable sources out there for the canning procedure. Now, you can also make vinegar out of the apples and or the pears.
The scraps.
Or you can just chunk them up and do it that way too.
Right.
People are not aware that is that simple. I mean, it takes about 4 months, realistically, to get that apple cider vinegar or that pear cider vinegar, but you can do it and do it very, very easily.
Right. It's part of a fermentation process. And so you would just simply, we have kind of some directions on our website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com. But you have to, there's a process with the scraps or just them themselves. And you let it reduce, you let it do its thing, and you can make vinegar.
You can make fresh pie, or you can pear pie filling or apple pie filling, so it's ready to dump into the casing of the pie, the shell, the crust.
The casing.
The casing. The shell of the crust of the pie, and then you put the top on, and then you put it in the oven. When we do can it in the pear pie or the pie filling procedure, what do we need to know?
Sure. So, you need to get something called clear gel.
Yep.
And what that is it helps make the, I don't know.
It's the gel.
Makes it the gel.
The jelly, the gel-like consistency that you see in the cherries you get in the can, in the jar, in the store, that type of thing. Yeah.
So some recipes say to use cornstarch. You
don't do that.
You don't want to do that. It's going to be chunky and weird, and it's going to look like raw chicken in a jar. So you want to get clear gel. You can only buy clear gel online. And
there's places where, and it does have an expiration date.
Yeah.
So you don't want to buy a 5-pound bag or a tub if you're not going to intend to use that over, a certain amount of time.
Right.
So you can make pear pie filling, apple pie filling, that type of thing. It's very easy to do. And you can also make pies and then freeze them whole, as we have done. And it worked very well. We pulled them out of the freezer. We had it encased in a freezer bag, and then we pulled them out and heated it up, and it worked very well. Worked really good. What's another ideal here? Snack. We can dehydrate our apples and pears.
Yeah, we've done this, and you can get creative. You can do anything where you, before you dehydrate them, you sprinkle some cinnamon on them. They make a really great snack, and
make the house smell good.
And, kids typically like that kind of stuff. So, if you could try that.
When you dehydrate these, we're not dehydrating them until they're as dry as a 2x4. There's a certain consistency of moisture you need in that in order for it to be
then they're kind of
edible, I guess would be the term.
They're kind of chewy, but still good.
Pear chutney or apple chutney. What is a chutney, first of all? People may not know what this addition to a dish is.
Some people would probably call it like a compote as well. It's just a nice cooked fruit, chopped cooked fruit dish.
Okay.
I don't know,
what is it used
it's
for?
It's like a condiment.
Okay.
So what you do is I made pear, I think it was dried cherry chutney. And so you chop the pears, you kind of reduce it down with some sugar and the chopped cherries, and it becomes sweet. You can can it, and then you can put it on things like pork or ham, or even just like toast. It's almost kind of like a jam, but not as jammy.
And we can juice these apples and pears. If you're advanced, you can make apple cider. If you just want to can the juice, you can run it through a juicer, and there's a way of separating the pulp so you can have more clear juice in the apple and the pear form. It takes a little time, but it's well worth it. I guess, if you do it right, you can make apple. Is there such thing as apple wine and pear wine? Is there not? Ways that people do that?
I think that, maybe like a wine or like a cider.
Yeah, cider would be the term that would be used there. You can also make you can also make really delicious honey with the skins of the apples and the pears. I will caution you that if you're trying to eliminate sugar from your diet, this is not the dish that you want to use because
No, you add a lot of sugar.
you add cups upon cups upon cups of sugar in order to get the consistency of honey. But you use the skins of both of these and you cook them down. So that is something that we have done, and it does work, but it does take a lot of sugar in order to do such.
Right. So there's that. And then you can make jam and jelly with it as well. And that's something that's definitely, a lot of people like apple jelly, or you could do like pear jelly. But jam, I made on our website, there's this apple lemon honey jam or something like that. Yeah, apple lemon honey jam. That's really good.
What's the difference between a jam and a jelly?
Jelly doesn't have the chunks of fruit. Jam does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jam is smooth.
Right.
Okay.
No, jelly.
Jelly is smooth. Jam has
Yeah.
the actual items in it. Okay.
You could also make apple or pear juice jelly.
Uh-huh.
You can make that really easily with the juice.
All right. We can freeze the pears. That's another option when it comes to it. If you don't want to can them, you can freeze apples as well in that instance. And there's a lot of different. Pear butter, apple butter is a good option. That's another canning procedure, but you could do that in the refrigerator. Make it refrigerator apple butter, refrigerator pear butter. Is that how? Or is that an iffy one that we're not?
Yeah,
certain?
no, you could do it in the fridge. You could leave it in the fridge or the freezer, but it's nice because you don't have to peel the apples or the pears. You just grind them.
One step.
Grind them, whether it be in a food processor or a grinder, and then we like the way we did it is we put it in a crock pot. You offset the lid so that the steam or whatever can
evaporate,
and then it cooks down. It reduces down, and it's really good. And you don't have to add any sugar, so it's concentrated flavors.
All natural. And with the juicing, when we juiced, we didn't add any sugar. It was, we juiced it. We pulled the pulp out of it, put it in the jar, put it in the water bath canner, and sealed the jars up. Now, obviously, I guess that would be classified as non-raw vegan because we accelerated the temperature and pasteurized it. I guess would be that's how we've done it. That's how you do it in order to safely can it.
Right.
In order that way, but you could take and just juice it and then freeze that juice, and you wouldn't accelerate. Wouldn't raise the temperature up. So maybe you get more beneficial properties out of that juice.
Yeah.
So. Well, yep, summer's just about over as the temperatures across the country begin to decline. The mercury is getting cooler, and school's in session. Maybe your kids have gone back to school, your grandkids are in school, or you're helping them with virtual learning. Well, nevertheless, with all of this going on, your lawn has been forgotten, and it's shedding a little tear about that.
Well, just because it's fall, we don't want to forget about our yards or those Japanese beetles either. They may be gone, but they are not far away. Not only did they feast on your roses and berries this summer, they laid eggs in your turf so they can start getting
those evil things.
Yeah, right. Take a stand with Phylum's Grub Gone. Grub Gone is a non-chemical BT granular that specifically targets scarab pests and their larvae. Simply apply the granular with a spreader, irrigate into the soil, and let the naturally occurring bacteria do its job.
Not only is Grub Gone easy to use, but it is the only non-chemical choice that effectively controls grubs. And the best part about this, it's non-toxic to bees and other pollinators. And beneficial insects, doesn't harm them. In fact, Grub Gone has no label restrictions for you to use around flowers. So you don't have to worry about getting your hands and knees and removing those dandelions before application so the bees don't get a hold of it and take it back to their hive and destroy the hive. Doesn't happen that way. It's Grub Gone from PhylumBioproducts.com, the natural choice. How do you spell that? That's PHYLLOM bioproducts.com. Check them out for other products they have available. Do not go anywhere. When we come back, podcaster of a garden podcast out of Montana, Jackie Beyer, will be with us. You're listening to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show.
Got a question for Joey and Holly? Send it via email anytime to gardentalkradio@gmail.com.
Planting conditions are always favorable with the Power Planter Earth Auger. No matter what the job is, Power Planter has the right size for you. Simply attach to a drill and let the Power Planter do the work for you, creating holes fast and efficiently with ease. Find the size that fits your project at powerplanter.com. Wisconsin Greenhouse Company designs greenhouses specifically built for the northern Midwest climate. All of their greenhouses are made to withstand heavy snow and wind for years to come. They build freestanding and home-attached greenhouses for both commercial growers, schools, and backyard gardeners. Visit WisconsinGreenhouseCompany.com. For more information on pricing or to request a greenhouse catalog, go to WisconsinGreenhouseCompany.com.
Do not go anywhere. There is more of the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show to come, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit powerplanter.com.
Brought to you by Blue Ribbon Organics, providing locally made organic compost and soil blends for gardens, farms, landscaping, and more. Visit BlueRibbonOrganics.com or call 262-497-8539 to find their products nearest you.
Dig planting holes from a comfortable standing position. Step, twist, pull, and plant. Visit ProPlugger.com.
The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show is brought to you by the following: Phylum Bioproducts, Dr. Jim's, MI Greenhouse LLC, Green Gobbler, Water Hoop, Seed Savers Exchange. Find all sponsors at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com and thank them for their support. Bluemel's Landscape and Garden Center. They have mums available. They have fall decor available. They also have the largest variety of bulk material in the Milwaukee area with 40 plus varieties of items from wood chips to sand to gravel to compost and everything in between. You can go there to get the mums and the fall decor. You can also pick up the bulk material with the proper equipment, or you can have them deliver it right to your property, right to your job site. So you can get those last minute jobs wrapped up so you're not thinking about it all winter long and thinking, man, I wish I would have done that. Get it done now and let Bluemel's Landscape and Garden Center help you with that. Bluemel's Landscape and Garden Center, Bluemels.com.
Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit powerplanter.com. Now here are your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show. Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Yeah, Jackie Beyer is an artist, journalist, and the host and creator of the Organic Garden podcast. She lives in Montana with her husband, Mike, and he's a pretty good vegetable gardener.
Welcome to the program, Jackie.
Hey, thanks for having me, Holly and Joey. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we thank you for taking time out of your day to join not only Holly and myself, but all of our listeners. We appreciate the time that you're going to offer to us.
Well, I'm just excited to talk to everybody. You guys were guests on my show way back when I first started out, and then again recently, and just it's exciting to share with your audience this time.
Awesome. So you are not much of a vegetable gardener, but you have an Organic Gardener podcast. Why did you decide to create the podcast?
Well, I always call myself the organic eater. And truth be told, I always wanted to work for like Rodale's Organic Gardening magazine, like as a graphic designer. Like I love reading the magazine. I love looking at all the pictures of the beautiful gardeners. And just, and I love being in the garden. I love eating organic vegetables. I'm just not the biggest fan of playing in the dirt, but I've had my podcast since 2015, so for 5 years now, and I definitely have learned a ton and garden a lot more, grow more. Like this year, I even actually planted my very first own like broccoli seeds that became broccoli plants that are growing out in the garden. Now, we're in Northwest Montana, and everybody's talking about we're expecting a freeze tonight, our first freeze and covering everything. So I'm not sure that those broccolis are actually going to get me broccoli this year, but it was just exciting, like doing my own seeds. And I've grown like basil plants, like I've grown things, flowers from seeds, but that was the first time like I ever planted the seeds indoors, grew them and then transplanted them outdoors.
Well, you speak of your podcast, and you've interviewed a lot of guests over the 5 years. What is one or a couple of the most random, eye-opening things you have learned from the guests that you've had on your show?
Well, so one guest I had was Anastasia Picayus, who's from the Brooklyn Grange in New York. which is like one of the biggest rooftop gardens in the world. And when I went there, because I grew up in New York, and I was visiting my mom, and we went to the rooftop of the Brooklyn Grange, and they had this thing called a pollinator border, which is like just the most beautiful flowers all around the edge of the outside of their garden, and just the whole connection between flowers, because they draw in beneficial insects, they draw in pollinators, they bring in, they'll make your vegetable garden so much more productive. And also, like, the underlying theme of my show, without a doubt, is soil health. And so it's kind of like more about creating an entire ecosystem than just growing a potato or just growing a carrot or just growing a vegetable. The whole kind of organic theme is a lot about creating an organic ecosystem. And so this pollinator border was just, and it had lots of herbs in it, which I love to grow herbs. And so just like, that's something I think I just really like to encourage people to do, is grow herbs. Like, even if you live in a city where you don't think you're going to be able to grow a lot of food, growing a fresh herb on your windowsill can make your food taste so much better. And it's just so good for the environment. So even if you think you're not doing anything because you're not growing tomatoes, you're not growing like actual food, like growing flowers helps your local farmer or your local gardener or just the environment by providing places for bees to eat. So to me, that's something that was really cool to see after talking to a guest and then going to their farm.
When you bring up the aspect of growing herbs, even if you're not going to grow tomatoes or peppers or potatoes, or you're unable to, because if you go to the store, you buy these little dinky things of herbs that are like, I don't know,
I'm just
expensive.
That
Yeah,
people do that.
Yeah, and it's so expensive, and if you look at it wrong, it's already dried up and wilted in your refrigerator. So having that fresh source, if people would do it once, they would continue to do it forever, because they realize how beneficial or the difference it is between the store-bought and the freshly grown on their windowsill.
Yeah, and then you have that plant growing, which is cleaning your air. And like, I lived in an apartment for a couple of years. Like, I taught school in a place that was 150 miles from my house, so I'd come home on the weekends and stay there during the week. And I was amazed at how many herbs grew in this apartment in northwest Montana, where there's like 3 feet of snow on the ground, and just how much that changed my cooking. And it was so nice to have those fresh herbs in my kitchen. And I was also able to grow a lot of lettuce. Like, in my classroom, we grew lettuce for the pet guinea pig, and we had a worm bin, which was really easy to keep in the classroom. I think every teacher should, like, every school should be composting. Like, I'm just a really big fan of compost. Like, even though I don't like to be in the garden because I don't really like dirty garden jobs, unless, like, I talk a lot about, like, when I come home from school and I'm in my school clothes or even my school jeans, like, I don't want to get those dirty, but I have, like, definite garden clothes for, like, when I do garden jobs. And, like, but one thing that never bothers me is turning the compost. Like, I consider composting a clean garden job. And just, I think everybody should be saving their compost.
Well, and when we were on your program, you talked about you're in a location where you just can't jump in the truck and 10 minutes later you're at a garden center and you load up a load of compost and bring it home.
Oh yeah, no.
You've got to make it a day planned out in order to go get compost. People don't realize how fortunate many of us are that have that availability so close to our gardens.
And even my mom, who lives on Long Island, there's like a botanical garden right in the middle of Nassau County where she lives, where they have like some of the best compost, and you can go buy like potting soil, or they call it like glacier gold. It's not glacier gold is here in Montana, but some kind of gold dirt that people have access to, that they can go get a pickup load or a truckload on a Saturday, or even like my mom goes and gets a bag full in her car. So yeah, there's definitely options. The nice thing about being in rural Montana is we kind of have more options for, like, getting cow manure or chicken manure from people. Or one thing with cow manure people have talked about on my show is make sure you get the cow manure from cows that have not eaten weed-free hay, which has taken me forever to get that down. But, like, if they eat weed-free hay, it means the hay was sprayed with pesticides. And I've had 2 very specific guests, but one of them was like the local nursery, and she said a lot of people around here had that problem where they were getting manure from cows. So they say be really particular about where you get it from, because that can just ruin your garden.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very persistent herbicide that
Killer
they are-
compost.
Yeah, that they're eating. So what is the most helpful garden information you have heard in a garden interview, or have ever received, or Mike has ever received?
Well, definitely composting and mulching. Again, like I said, the theme of my show underlyingly has been soil health, but people talk a lot about mulching too, because mulching will keep the weeds at bay. It helps, like where we are watering. We're in a very dry climate here in Northwest Montana, so watering's hard and difficult. And even like my husband and I lived for 6 years without running water, so then we were really limited on gardening. This is a tip that people are always surprised by, like when you're hauling your water to your garden, the only thing that is getting that water are the roots of your vegetables, for sure. So we didn't have as big of a problem with weeds as then now that we have like a deep well and we can like put the sprinkler on, we get a lot more weeds. But mulching will definitely keep retain soil moisture, like make it so you have to water less, which is like one of my biggest struggles, because I usually have a full-time job, and like there'll be like a week in the summer where I won't even see the garden, like by the time I go to work and go to the store afterwards and then come home and make dinner and like maybe take my dogs for a walk, like I might not even see the garden in the daylight, even in Montana where we have really long days in the summer. And just so watering is always a big struggle for me. And also, like, that's another thing that I'm feeling like right now at the end of summer, like I'm feeling bad that I didn't put a fall crop of like lettuce and arugula and stuff in. But then I'm also like, I am really tired of the commitment of having to go down to the garden every single night and water every single thing down there. And I'm just kind of ready for a rest. So it's kind of nice to, like, one big thing I feel like people do a lot is plant too much. You've got to really be thinking about what's going to happen in August and September.
Well, yeah, everybody wants
to jump ahead there.
Everybody wants to put in, 80, 90 tomato plants. But whenever they're all producing 5, 10, 15 pounds over the course, and you're dealing with 5-gallon buckets of, 10, 15 of a quantity of that, you got to figure out what you're going to do with that. That you bring up a good
and
point.
Where you're going to store it, and how you're going to, if you're going to can it, when are you going to, how late are you going to stay up at night canning all that?
Do you have time to do it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And for people who hear that when you go down the garden, your garden is not right off the back door porch. So I want to make people aware that that's the reason why you're not able to just look out the back window and see it as easily as many of us are granted or are blessed to do.
I mean, it's not that far away, but it's, yeah. And then my husband has what I call like the mini farm, which is even further away than like outside of our garden. Like in Montana, I spoke at this conference last year and I asked like a question, like if you what was your biggest garden challenge? And I think out of 40 people I talked to, 35 of them said deer. Like we have so you have to have big fencing in Montana to keep the deer out if you're going to grow food. It's just, that's one of the biggest challenges I get. The 3 biggest questions I get on my show, without a doubt, are what do I do about bugs and pests, squash bugs? And so a lot of the answers to that are like row cover, mulch, and healthy soil, just keeping everything clean. And then the other question I get is, what do I do about critters? What do I do about critters? So fencing is just essential. Like we've had so much heartbreak here because we've tried over the years to grow things outside the fence and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I know Joey and I couldn't agree more about that whole fencing thing. So we were talking with Jackie Beyer of the Organic Garden Podcast. So what would you say, since you're talking about mulch, what would you say is your ideal mulch or your favorite mulch?
Mike really likes to use straw because especially the nice thing about straw is it will, then work into your soil. So not only does it just like help the year that you plant it to keep the weeds at bay and to keep the moisture in, but then it's adding organic material into your soil as you turn it in after that crop's done and you're mixing it into the soil. Something I used for mulch this year that I've never used before were grass clippings. Like I would, take the lawnmower bag of grass clippings and let them kind of dry out and turn a little bit brown and then put that around my flowers or around like the broccoli or the carrots and stuff. And I was amazed at how well that worked because we live in Northwest Montana and we're kind of in the woods. We have a very large lawn for fire break to keep away, like if there was a forest fire, and so we had an abundance of lawn clippings, and we didn't have as much organic straw. And Mike's always on me about use straw, don't say hay. I don't exactly remember exactly why, but something. And you can use hay, but I just think he likes to use straw because it won't make like weeds or something.
Right.
It doesn't like get seeds into the ground as much. So he's always like use straw. So he likes straw. But I thought the grass clippings worked really well this year.
Well, now there has been a lot of new gardeners this year for obvious reasons. What are the common newbie mistakes that you see or have heard or been asked about? I did this. Was this wrong or was this right? What have you seen on your end?
Well, I just feel like the biggest newbie mistake that I see is people or that I hear from is like people overplanting their beds and just putting too much stuff in, getting super overwhelmed in August and and I'm totally guilty of this myself, like not planning enough, not reading the backs of their seed packets. So and I do this all the time too. Like Mike's always like, you can't put carrots in the middle of July, there's not enough time for them to grow. Like knowing how long it takes something to grow, getting those seeds in time in the spring, like counting backwards, being like, all right, I'm going to harvest this in September. I need to know when's my last, like in Montana, our last frost date is usually September 8th. So making sure that if it's something like green beans that can't take any frost, they need to be planted so they're going to grow, so they're going to have time to be harvested. Like those kind of mistakes. And then like the over planting thing, like just putting too much stuff in one bed and not planning for growth, like how big a squash plant actually gets, and then putting like too many things in there. That's like the biggest thing I feel like I hear newbies say is just not enough planning, not doing enough strategic planning. And definitely one of the other things that a lot of my season's guests talked about is taking really good notes, like keeping a journal, keeping records of what did work, what didn't work, when do you want to plant the next year. Like I am doing a lot of my fall planning this August. I've done more planning this year for next year's garden. Like I already know where's my kale going to go, where's my broccoli going to go. Partly because, did I mention that I bought nematodes this year? I finally broke down and bought the nematodes. I think we talked about this when you guys were on my show the last time. Because all these soil health experts keep telling me about getting beneficial nematodes. They're so essential. And so I finally was like, well, if I'm going to put the nematode, I want them in the bed where my kale is going to go, because my kale has so many bugs in it this year. And so my friend Patty was like, who's like a big soil expert, she's like, if you don't want to have those bugs, you should get some beneficial nematodes, and they will eat the insects that are eating your kale. And so planning where my kale and my broccoli is going to go next year, that's been a big game changer for me.
Awesome.
And I consider myself a very newbie gardener.
All right. So how can our guests find out?
Our listeners.
Our listeners find out more about you and your podcast?
So my podcast website is just organicgardenerpodcast.com. And then I'm on Instagram and Facebook pretty regularly. But, on your podcast app. And so we did change the name of the podcast in December to Green Organic Garden Podcast. So I guess if you search for it, you're going to search for Green Organic Garden, because there is another, The Organic Gardener Podcast with a capital THE, which is part of why I changed my name.
Well, Jackie, we greatly appreciate the time you've offered to Holly, myself, and all of our listeners, and we thank you for the information you've shared with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. And if your listeners need anything, they can always reach out to me. I'm happy to try to find any answers I can for people. And my guests, like Joey and Holly, are what make my show awesome, because they have shared so many golden seeds and just taught us so much. So
well, thank you.
Check it out if you like podcasting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And do not go anywhere. When we come back, it's all going to be about your garden questions and our garden answers. You're listening to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show.
Got a question for Joey and Holly? Send it via email anytime to gardentalkradio@gmail.com.
Protect your plants against damage with a 3-in-1 plant guard and special blend fertilizer. Visit ivorganics.com.
Do not go anywhere. There is more of the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show to come, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit powerplanter.com.
Trim Bin turns any chair into a workstation. Comfortably sort your herbs, dried flowers, cannabis, and more. Easily collect pollen with the static brush and mirror finish collection tray. High walls keep your work contained. To get yours, visit harvest-more.com. Made in California.
When it comes to bulk landscaping materials, Blue Mills Garden and Landscape Center is where everyone goes. Whatever the project, we have the materials you need with over 40 varieties to choose from. Soils, mulches, gravels, decorative stones, fresh cut sod. Blue Mills has these products in stock and ready for easy pickup or fast delivery. So what are you waiting for? Now is the time to get your yard back into shape. Stop in and pick these materials up or call us for delivery today. Nobody does bulk landscaping materials better than Blue Mills Garden and Landscape Center.
Blue Mills, 4930 West Loomis Road, 414-282-4220. The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show is brought to you by the following: Power Planter Earth Augers, Ivy Organics, Root Maker, Pomona Universal Pectin, Chapin Manufacturing Incorporated, Pro Plugger, Tomato Snaps, World's Coolest Floating Rain Gauge. Find all sponsors at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com and thank them for their support.
Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit powerplanter.com. Now here are your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show. We appreciate you being part of the program today. If you've got a question, we've got an answer. You can get a hold of us a couple of different ways. One being gardentalkradio@gmail.com. You can just send us an email over and we will get you an answer back. You can also give us a call right now or anytime at 1-800-927-SHOW. That's 1-800-927-SHOW. We make it easy for you to remember so you can have access to us 24/7, 365. If we can't get to you right now, leave us the question and we'll call you back. We had a number of questions come in this week. We will start with Scott here. This is my second year. My Amish paste tomatoes have been disaster. Last year, the rain made them bust and rot on the vine. This year, even the good ones are rotting from the inside. My German pink tomatoes are big and wonderful. I'm in the city of Milwaukee. Any advice on what's going on?
Sure. So this is because of inconsistent watering. And so a lot of times...
And it affects different tomatoes differently. That's why certain ones that he has are doing phenomenal.
Right. So it's the Amish paste, which is a more... It's not... I don't think it's an heirloom variety, but it's kind of close to an heirloom variety.
It's an heirloom.
Okay. Yeah. It is an heirloom. Heirloom varieties typically have more of this issue than non-heirloom varieties. And so what happens is that you water your tomatoes, maybe you get a drought or like a few... string of days or a week or more where you don't have a lot of rain, and then you get some heavy rain that's going to cause them to grow fast and blow out.
Too much water when there hasn't been any water. Too much goes into the tomato and the skins can't catch up with that. And we've had tomatoes on the vine before we consistently watered it looked like somebody just cut the inside of it out and left the skins hanging there. Now also the problem with the internal rotting, again, that's blossom end rot that's not fully developing on the external portions because that inconsistent watering can't get enough calcium to pick up in the soil because the soil is too dry. It locks it up. So that would be the issue and that would be the problem. So we want to water regularly, invest in an irrigation system. Dripworks.com has a phenomenal system and systems in which you can hook up manually timers, Wi-Fi timers, digital program timers. They've got a lot of different things over there. So an investment of a drip irrigation makes a tremendous difference when to your garden. It's well worth the investment.
Right.
Let's see, here's another one. My lawn has multiple brown spots. I initially thought the grass was just becoming dormant due to our weather conditions of being dry. After several heavy rains, there was no change in the color of the grass. The grass remained dry, and when I rake it with a garden rake, it pulls out of the ground. I do not think this is a matter of dormancy. Do you have any ideas? Joe asked.
Well, unfortunately, Joe, it sounds like you have grubs. And so grubs are basically a larvae that's eating the roots of your grass. And that's why when you rake it, it just pulls up dead grass.
And different patches that does this. It's a so what are some options? And I know when there's when we did some research on this, there's many different steps into accomplishing the removal of the grubs.
Right. So, and you can definitely do your own research on this if you want to find an alternative to what we're saying here. But one thing that's going to work a little bit faster than all of the rest is using nematodes. And so what nematodes are they're little tiny microscopic worms. Those nematodes will get rid of the grubs, and then that's going to help your grass. But if you do use nematodes, you have to follow directions. Like one is that the lawn always needs to be well watered, and you have to, the nematodes need to be alive when you apply them.
Right.
So you're going to get live nematodes. You need to make sure that they are alive.
Get them from a reputable source, not somebody you bought them on sale on the internet.
Uncle Joe's nematode shop or
something like that. But you
Somebody comes and knocks on your door.
if you're going to invest, you want to make sure you do this correctly, and there's multiple steps. But if you're having patches of grass that are going dormant in the middle of the summer, it's certainly not the grass's problem. It's unless
you have a drought.
Well, yeah.
But the thing is, there are chemical applications that you can use, but the nematodes they seem to do well. And then there's also something called milky spores that you can apply, but that takes longer.
Right. But if you want your grass to look good, you can always just purchase Pearl's Premium Ultra Low Maintenance Lawn Seed. It works well for that. You can use coupon code Joey JOEY20 and save 20% on your checkout at pearlpremium.com. And you only have to cut your grass once every 4 to 6 weeks instead of weekly. And this takes care of a lot of the problems that your lawn typically has. Let's see here.
Okay, so another question is about when should the spring onions start growing the flowers? Does it have to be a certain amount of years old? And after I plant the spring onions, I got from the store by taking the root part.
Okay, so here's a couple of things you need to know. Onions and leeks, we'll categorize both of them, are biennials. That means you planted them in spring of the spring of the year, and you let them grow until the fall of the next year. So you've gone 18 months roughly, and about 16 months into the growth cycle, the seed pods will begin to develop. Halfway in the spring of the next year, you'll start to see a very tall vertical growth. A flower will or a bulb will begin to appear on the top of the flower, on the top of the stem of the onion and leek. You let that go until fall, and then you're going to have multiple black seeds inside of there. That's when the flower and the seeds will be ready to harvest. Now, the problem with getting an onion from the store and planting it is that you do not know what day length that onion is. Onions fall in a category of short, mid, and long day varieties. Long day in the north, neutral or midday in the central portions of the United States, and short day in the southern part. So if you get an onion from the southern portions of the United States in your grocery store and you live in the north, I don't know where they ship from, I'm just telling you how this would work, and you plant that, you're going to get seeds. It's going to produce seeds. However, it's not, when you plant those seeds the next year, it's not going to grow a bulb. It's just going to do top growth. And even people who grow seed in their garden each year, we still are teaching them that there is a thing called long day, short day, neutral day, because they just grab a variety of onions. They don't know what that means, or that's not even labeled, and they just plant it, and they get frustrated each year because the onion does not bulb. Well, it's because you're growing the wrong day length type of onion in your geographical area. So you want to be aware of that when you're saving seeds on onions. Leeks, it doesn't matter. You can grow a leek in Brazil to Canada to the UK. It doesn't matter. It's going to grow. Onions, however, the bulb development dictates what day length variety that onion type is.
Right. So, next question we have here is topping tomatoes. What do you recommend? Do you cut the top or the leader stem or just the flowers? How long before frost do you do that? Are there any other crops I should do this to? Thank you. I love listening to you guys and appreciate all your work. I heard about it from a friend. Wasn't sure if it was gardening myth or not. I thought I better ask Joey and Holly because they would know the truth.
Okay, well,
Catherine.
we appreciate that, Catherine. The tomatoes, well, Brussels sprouts, you can top the Brussels sprouts about 45 days before you intend to harvest, or when you begin to see the nodes developing on the joints of the Brussels sprout that will soon be the sprout. But we'll focus on tomatoes here. Tomatoes from flower to fruit based on cherry or beefsteak or large steak is 20 to 30 days. So you really want to do this about 45 days out, what I'm about to explain to you, before the frost, your average first frost. Obviously, that can be changed very rapidly, either sooner or later. But 45 days out, you want to top the growth tips. Yeah, you're going to cut off some of the flowers. You want to basically top it. Where you see the extension of the growth vertical, that's where you want to cut it off. You also want to stop watering if you can. Obviously, when it rains, you can't control that. But if you're on an irrigation system, stop the watering. And then also, you can take a shovel and go 6 inches outside, find the stem, and then go 6 inches out away from the stem and go straight down with your shovel 3/4 of the way around the root system. That will cut off a lot of the roots and put that plant in a stress mechanism response, and it will rapidly produce the fruit that is currently on the vine. So you can get red tomatoes before frost, or ripe tomatoes, whether yellow, white, purple, blue, whatever the case is, before frost, so you're not harvesting green tomatoes the day or the night before, and then you got to bring them in and try to ripen them that way. So top the tomatoes, chop the roots 3/4 of the way around, 6 inches away from the stem, and shut the water off on them if possible. And that will help you get ripe tomatoes before frost. And we appreciate the questions, and we are out of time. Did you miss any portion of this program, or you want to revisit in its entirety? Some of you like to do that, and you can do that by going to our website, the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, and clicking on the Season 4 tab at the top of the page. You can also just send us an email at gardentalkradio@gmail.com, and we'll send you the link to this show. Join us next week on the program, where we'll be discussing winter prep for your yard, what you need to do, and seed saving. And our guest will be Katie, the Kombucha Lady, and your garden questions. That's all next week. Do not miss it. For
Holly Baird.
I'm Joy Baird. So until then, we will see you in the garden.